It's the season finale of 60 Plus Racing Adventures. You're watching it here on RaceSpotTV. 60 Plus Racing Adventures is the unique iRacing series for drivers 60 years of age or older. A really interesting little niche in the iRacing community, but a really respectful one, and they have some great racing. They've had some great racing, and this is the season finale. David Haynes here with Will Chadwick to crown a champion at the end of this season, and Will, as always, 12 weeks to this championship. This is the final one.
This is the final round, David, and we've seen a good season so far. Here is the schedule, as we have covered on RaceSpotTV, those 3 rounds as we always do. Some of the rounds since you've last saw has been Richmond, an oval round, Monza, Road America, Interlagos, Willow Springs, some really classic tracks. And finish off with a classic, an old Grand Prix track of yesteryear, often shared the British Grand Prix with Silverstone. We're here at Brands Hatch, the GP circuit as well.
Years that it didn't host the Championship British Grand Prix, it very often hosted a non-championship F1 race. They should bring back non-championship F1 races, or not. I don't know, maybe we've got enough. That's a question for a different time, but this being the season finale, we've got to look at the points and who's up top, and the answer is Greg Seitz. Every time we've seen, he has been utterly dominant. I think recently turned 60, and he is certainly a bit of a fox amongst the henhouse in this season of 60 plus racing adventures, ahead of Ragnar Wisloff himself, multiple times a champion, Ross Addy, multiple times a champion, John Morgan there, 4th in the standings from Mike Grandy, Paul Stump, Barry Hills, Mike McCormick, Gahardis Jorrison, and Randy Shoemaker's our top 10. John Morgan, over the age of 70, is looking to wrap up that Super 70s sub-championship as well. It's amazing. These guys are still so competent, so passionate about iRacing, and some of them not only past 70 years, a couple of years past 70 years as well. It's awesome to know that there's a lot of iRacing ahead of you and I will. And there's a lot of racing ahead of these guys for the 2 races of 60 plus racing adventures here at Brands Hatch. This is the grid for race number 1. Greg Seitz and Ragnar Wisloff, 1st and 2nd in the championship, 1st and 2nd on the grid. And there's John Morgan, always a chance of a podium, always aiming for consistent results inside of the top 5. He shares that row 2 with Gahardis Jorrison. Craig Vaught and Mike McCormick are row number 3, and then Ulf Olsen and John Payne behind there. Russ Addy and Jack Turner completing the top 10. Mike Grandy and Eugene Clark 11th and 12th. Douglas Beasley and Barry Hills in the next row, and then Bill Smitham and Greg Garris, JC Hay and Franz Josef Stum. Earl Setzer, David Bradley and Richard Coulomb are the last drivers on our grid as well. Richard Coulomb, no qualifying time there, but very well could still start out at 21st. And Will, it's not just that overall championship, that Super 70s championship. When we've spoken to drivers throughout this season, they've also been very passionate about the team's championship.
Yes, that is true, and we have obviously the team representatives here today. Often you can pick them out by being in a relatively similar livery, and yeah, if we head on to this formation lap, of course, not massive amounts to play for in the Drivers' Championship. We believe that to be pretty close to rounded up, but in the Super 70s class, there's certainly some position changes we could still see happening. But with John Morgan's qualifying position already up there in 3rd place, how consistent we've seen him be over the years, you would definitely expect him to take it.
Famously, 2 layouts of Brands Hatch here. We're on the Grand Prix layout, as most sensible racing should be. That short Indy layout, as far as very short configurations go, it gets a good run every now and again. Can be very entertaining.
And it's often used a lot more in the UK. The Indy layout is massively utilised across all types of formula inside UK racing, and it's a real treat to go to the GP whenever this circuit comes up in the real world, and I'm sure it's a treat for our drivers here tonight. Of course, a relatively short circuit by modern standards, but incredibly high speed around this back section that you're currently on. Only 3.7 kilometers long, but with 9 very fast turns. We should be sure to see a lot of action here tonight.
most of the way around this formation lap, just approaching the lightly banked Sterling's left-hander that brings you towards Clark Curve at the end of the lap. Not expecting pit lane to get a whole lot of work out in today's racing. We'll wait and see though. Pace car though is going to use that pit entry because it's pulling away from the field, ready to get this race underway. 22 laps of Brands Hatch, and Greg Seitz is underway to get us racing into the early lead. The championship leader looking to put crown and glory on his incredibly strong season of 60-plus racing adventures.
Yeah, and as we go down into turn number 2, people seem to be pretty close at this moment going around the first few corners. It's kind of spread it out a little bit, but as you can see, Wisloff chasing Seitz fairly closely in these opening corners. Very important to stay onto the tail as much as possible in these opening moments, as the tow can be quite effective around this circuit.
Racing, as the championship has done for multiple seasons now in the Indy Lights ladder, Indy Pro 2000 car, a junior open wheeler, and it slipstreams pretty heavily. In fact, it might even share its chassis with the GB4 and GB3 cars. Not confident on that one. Maybe. I think there's a Tatus chassis underneath, so it's possible. Got a lot of racing here in the mid-pack as you get towards the far end of the circuit through a sequence of right-handers. Plenty of elevation change around the circuit. From the TV cameras, you wouldn't immediately spot that quite a few of these corners are blind for the drivers on entry.
Yeah, certainly. Some of these corners are massive commitment corners, especially turn 7, turn 6. You're committing so much and using so much of the inside and outside curbings that it can be really, really challenging to thread your car through. We're getting a bit of a driver's eye view at the moment from the cockpit of one of the cars a little bit further back. It is Barry Hill, second place in your Super 70s Championship. Not the best qualifying for him. He will be looking to move forward in the race. Of course, plenty of time for him to do so. We're expecting, well, we've got 22 laps of racing, and that will take us a reasonably large amount of time, especially in a single-seater. So we will certainly see some chopping and changing, but as we come round and enter that GP loop section, you wouldn't expect Hills to be making a move down into the next corner.
Straighten up a little bit. Drop through Pilgrim's Drop and then up towards Hawthorne Bend, where you can see a lot of the cars ahead of us nearly banging the limiter there in 5th, and you just hope that you don't track out too wide. You can get high-sided on the curbs in a car like this in areas like that. And following behind Bill Smitham, got a little wide in a couple of places, but not far enough off Barry Hills to get all too close. Still a bit of a train going early on in this race in front of Barry Hills, and that's almost a whole lap completed on board there to give you that perspective of a few of those corners are blind going in. Greg Seitz leading the way from Ragnar Wisloff through turn 1. Again, a bit blind on the exit as it drops so sharply away. John Morgan still sitting in that 3rd place. It's sort of 5th on back, where I think the racing really kicks off in this phase, and you do have a big train all the way from Ulf Olsen through to Greg Garris.
Really hard to describe what exactly it is like to race that turn number 1, not only in a simulator but in the real world. Paddock Hill Bend is one of the most iconic corners in British motorsport, and maybe even world motorsport, with how the compression as you exit the corner just makes the car grip up so much, and certainly a unique challenge for these drivers here tonight. Going round turn number 6 there into 7 and 8. Well, it should actually, I'm one behind on that one, but this corner is always a hard one. It's side by side through here is almost impossible, and I've seen it in many race series, and I've very rarely seen it pulled off. So it'd be very interesting to see if we see any of that action tonight. But looking back a little bit further down in the pack, around that top 10 sort of area. We've got some really good battles going on.
So we were on board with Barry Hills earlier, and he's right at the tail end of this train, behind Bill Smitham, behind Eugene Clark, Jack Turner, Douglas Beasley, Mike Grandy, Ulf Olsen, Craig Vaught as we go forward. Here's the 181.
And as they come down into the second corner for the 4th time here this evening. No real moves at this moment in time. And of course, the slowest corner on the track, that hairpin, famous for... I can't even remember the moment now. I don't even know if it was in Formula 1, but there was a famous pass there and some famous lines of commentary from Murray Walker of driver going in and passing in the middle of the corner. I know the reference. I don't know if you know it, David, but yeah, I can't remember the names of the drivers or what it was involved in, but it was a very, very iconic pass. Not seen any of that so far, but looking at Mike Grandy here on your screens, looking to attack the Ulf Olsen, who we've seen out for many, many times here. A lot of returning names we always get in this championship, and it's great to see the constant support, as I believe that is Bill Smitham off in the background.
Yes, Bill Smitham dropping back somewhat. Ulf Olsen off his line through the final corner here as well. Mike Grandy all over him. Is he getting left? A car width there. Find out down towards turn 1 where they do make contact. Grandy on the outside, both of them off through the gravel at turn 1.
That's big contact for both those drivers there. Grandy and Olsen will be having both a decent amount of damage each. You can see the frustration from Mike Grandy with that little bit of a swerve, just to say that I wasn't very happy about that. Of course, some words exchanged over the radio as well in game, and really that's really impacted both of their races quite early on. We're only on lap 5, and even if your car isn't damaged and you somehow not got any, it's a massive time loss.
Looking at it once again, Mike Grandy round the outside, doesn't get the space he thought he was entitled to, and both cars make contact. Both cars run wide. Not sure if Ulf Olsen made it all the way to the tyre barrier. Mike Grandy stayed off it. You can reconstruct a little bit of it from the marks left in the gravel, but it doesn't look like either car is in a good way as Ulf Olsen on the live pictures spins and maybe makes contact with the Armco barrier there. He's dropping down all the way to last position.
You have to think that's some sort of result of damage that is already inflicted on that car. Let's watch it come through a high-speed section. Yeah, it turns in and the car instantly is looking to pitch around him. Probably some suspension or aerodynamic damage, whether that be at the rear or front, which has just caused that car to be so unbalanced. And unfortunately, although I believe Olsen and Grandy in as well can get their fast repairs, it leaves them incredibly unlikely to be able to get a result and some good points here.
So back with the train and back with Barry Hills, closer than he's ever been to Eugene Clark, but not easy to pass. It's almost like a bit of a Formula 1 style DRS train here. You're slipstreaming off Eugene Clark, but he's slipstreaming off Barry Hills. Sorry, he's slipstreaming off Jack Turner, who's slipstreaming off at Douglas Beasley, all the way up front.
And Douglas Beasley, as you mentioned, has been our highest gainer so far in this race, with inside this top sort of 15 area, up 5 places, started 13th, now running in 8th. So a very good start for Douglas. Be looking to try and push forward that little bit more as well. Of course, quite a distinct gap opening up between the likes of Russ Addy and Mike McCormick, and also John Morgan as well. You know, you see quite a fair amount of gap between those drivers. So once you kind of make it up to the 6th place position, 5th place position, you're going to struggle to make it any further than that unless you've got some mega pace.
To that hairpin again. John Morgan's dropping back. Oh, and that's why. Yeah, he's off from 3rd position. He's had dramas. And this is the replay of it, just on the exit. Oh, doesn't even get the curb or anything. The tyres are just... oh, got no grip there, and as one of the slowest corners on the track, you are in 1st or 2nd gear and maybe more easily able to light up the rear tyres than out of some of the faster corners. Just a simple little mistake, not under a whole lot of pressure from John Morgan.
Uncharacteristic is all I can really say about that one. It's not often we see Morgan make mistakes such as that, and you know, against Barry Hills in this championship, yes, he's got a 30-something point lead, and it would be a massive overturn for Barry Hills if he was able to do that. it is still possible, because not only are we thinking about Barry Hills, we're also looking to Mike McCormick as well, who is also in that Super 70s Championship, only 4 points adrift from Hills. So, although still incredibly unlikely that we see a change in that class, it's certainly not what you'd want to be doing in these opening moments of this race.
No, not sailing serenely to the finish of the season with a move like that. Greg Garris also pushing the limits of the track in the final corner, almost into the grass through turn 1 there, getting quite a fair chunk of the curb. Might need to just settle it down a little bit. Starting lap 8 of 22 for the first of 2 races. Greg Seitz leads out to 1.5 seconds now, and that's getting towards breaking the slipstream range to Ragnar Wisloff, who's tried all he can to hang on so far in this race. Hasn't quite happened, but they're still both clearly the 2 fastest drivers. We saw the mistake from John Morgan, who was in 3rd, and now it means there's a big gap to Mike McCormick, who's now in 3rd. And some of the other battles through the field, Russ Addy, John Payne, Craig Fort. This looks like Russ Addy ahead of John Payne and Craig Vaught through the final corner we go. And what's throwing me for a loop there is that little bit of the traffic, but it's Mike Grandy, who we know went through pit lane because of the damage that he had, who's shortly to go a lap down against this 3-way fight for 4th, 5th and 6th.
And it shows you how costly that bit of contact was early on. Someone of his caliber wouldn't like to be obviously in this position, and when you have crashes like that, Grandy, you know, it really costs your entire race. I mean, there's not much Grandy can do now from this position to be able to get back any points or any positions, really, because the time loss is just so huge. Touching on the point of kind of where people are at currently in the season, we had an oval round last, so unlike the normal road racing rounds where it was likely that we saw Seitz win at least once every week, we have Greg win last week, probably down to the fact that it was an oval, but it does mean that at least since the last round we haven't had any wins from Seitz, and he's certainly determined to change that here this evening and win here in this final round.
So Mike Grandy trying to figure out exactly where his pace fits amongst this. Trying to get out of the way of some of these battles, and eventually he does. We had some of those guys like Barry Hills, Bill Smitham starting to range up somewhat on this group here, and I think Douglas Beasley's made the move on Jack Turner. You pointed him out as the biggest mover in the field earlier on, and now he goes up to 6 positions gained so far in this race. Douglas Beasley working it out at Brands Hatch. Yeah, side by side for Hills and Clark.
Yeah, and that was a good pass there from Barry Hills. Again, extending that gap to where Morgan is. Obviously, Morgan at the back of this train after that spin that he had, running in 3rd early on. We clearly know that Morgan has good pace due to his qualifying efforts, but at this moment in time, he is both losing to his 2 closest rivals in the Super 70s Championship, which at this moment in time isn't anything to panic about, but could turn costly later on this evening in the second race if something was to happen, but not for long. Morgan does make a move past Smitham, and he's able to just close up that gap between him and his rivals that little bit.
Oh, they're all off. They're all in the fence, as they say. Eugene Clark's off, but so is Douglas Beasley. Both of them making a similar mistake. Too much speed through the left-hander. Rhea stepping out. Car's looking super taily in places here as well. And it just happens you get in a little too hot. You get that exit curb. You high-side the car. There's 1. There's 2. Both of them toboggans on that exit curb.
Yeah, and that exit curb's so high, as you can just see it in the camera shot there. We were sat looking at those 2 stricken cars of our 2 top 10 runners. You can easily grind the car out, and with how these cars kind of behave and how low they are to the ground, it is relatively easy to do, and as you can see, it's massively cost them both in this race here this evening.
JC Hayes in 12th, Greg Garris is in 13th, and they're the two cars he's looking at on screen halfway around the lap right now. Garris with certainly no shortage of commitment. We've seen him run a little wide on the exit of a couple of corners, though, really throwing his way through. He's got this worked out to maybe make an unconventional pass here, and Garris will get past JC Hay.
Definitely a smart decision from JC Hay there to back out of it. I certainly wouldn't want to be going side by side.
What did I say just a couple seconds ago about Greg Garris?
Yeah, but you've got to push it that hard round here. Like, it's really important to feel confident in your ability to push the car to the limits around this circuit. It's a circuit that will absolutely punish you if you're not using 101% of the track. Of course, going a little bit over the mark there for Greg Garris. However, it certainly looks like it's better to run wide onto the grass in that corner rather than getting stuck on the curb. So if you're going wide, maybe it's the best option.
Like I always say, if you're committing crime, make sure it's big enough that they write a Wikipedia article about it.
Everyone wants a Wikipedia article. We might be writing a Wikipedia article about this at the moment, though, because there is a really, really good fight between Hills, Morgan, Smith and Turner, all jostling for position here down into the fast section at the back of the circuit here on the GP loop, and all looking like they're all quite racy. They all seem to be holding some really, really good pace at this moment in time, and as the recovering John Morgan slowly makes his way back up the order, he's now against second place in his sub-championship, the Super 70s class. We'll be getting to see these two titans of the Super 70s class battle out not too far from now.
If you don't have John Morgan as your driver to watch in the final half of this race, I think you're a bit silly. He's had a bit of a look there at Barry Hills. Now we'll have a look at the inside, the Druid's hairpin here, and this is where he struggled putting the power down earlier. That cost him the podium position initially. No dramas with that this time. Another spot gain for John Morgan. So we've got Jack Turner just up the road next, but then it'd be a lot of work to do in not many laps in this race for him to move even further and catch Craig Vaught or John Payne. That looks like Jack Turner suddenly having some problems though. He looked like in that long left-hander onto the Grand Prix loop. As a couple of drivers have, that they're starting to struggle with the rear grip, car getting very oversteery in the long run.
Certainly something that could be one to watch. You would expect Morgan to be able to close that gap up to Turner. Looking at some more gaps, Bill Smitham on the attack of Barry Hills. Hills looking to fall back a little bit at this moment in time, and that could be costly for him in the points that he's scoring to try and keep second in the championship here. I do believe that if the result was to finish like this, we would see a change into the final race this evening where Mike McCormick would overtake Barry Hills, but of course that could still change from now. Going down into turn number 1 for the 14th time. Smitham not quite close enough. We'll look to maybe get a better exit, but actually it looks like Barry Hills has got a really, really good run through Paddock Hill there.
Grass is getting rather unprofessionally mowed in a couple of places around here. Watching this all play out. It's the middle of the field where the battling has been all race and continues to be. John Morgan all over the back of Jack Turner. Bill Smitham lining up Barry Hills potentially here as well. Downhill you can pick up a lot of speed.
Yeah, and we've got a really, really good fight, like you say, for these kind of outer echelons of the top 10. People scrapping for whatever points they can conjure here in our first race of the night. Certainly setting the tone to show us who's got some really good pace, and maybe foreshadowing what we'll see a little bit later on. But we often hear from sites that he doesn't mind, spicing it up a bit and going from the back. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that here in the second race. Of course, a beautiful liveried car, that orange and chrome feature. Spec maps feel like just yesterday they were added to iRacing, but what an addition they were, and using that to full effectiveness. The beautiful orange and chrome livery for Russ Racing out in the lead.
completely gaudy monster energy liveries just weren't possible without spec maps. So for that, we say thank you. In this case, it's sort of a USAAF scheme going on for Greg Seitz. He's dropped back a little bit. He was out to 2 seconds clear of Wisloff. Now it's down to 1.3, just trending down a little bit. Still 7 laps to go.
Yeah, and it's hard to say with Seitz. He's so consistent that you wouldn't expect him to be able to, or be likely to mess it up. We've seen a few small changes. Smithen's got ahead of Hills. We're watching Turner right now against Morgan.
Morgan's got ahead of Turner.
Yeah, that is true. I was thinking that, but I wasn't 100% sure. But nice to know that you're on the ball. And really now, for Morgan, there's nothing he can do other than try and extend that gap. To try and close that time down to Craig Vaught would be unrealistic to imagine. However, we did obviously see the true pace from Morgan. So never say never. But really, at this moment in time, I don't blame Morgan for just keeping his eyes forward and focusing on just setting the best lap times he can possibly set.
So this group of drivers, after a little bit of going back and forth, potentially starting to sort itself out a little bit. Bill Smitham remains the biggest mover ahead of Barry Hills at the moment. May they be able to catch Jack Turner if John Morgan scurries on down the road?
And yes, it's hard to break the toe around here. It looks like such a track that's dependent on not getting much aero wash, and a track that may be hard to follow. But through all my racing experience here, through watching many races over the course of the last few years, it always feels like Brands Hatch GP provides better racing than you could ever really expect. A little bit further back, Greg Garris and JC Hay again fighting. We saw this earlier in the race where Hay let Garris pass, but it looks like that's changed around once again. Garris is back on the attack of Hay, and again down into turn 1. You wouldn't say there wasn't a move on. Going to look to the inside, not really commit to it, and just try and make JC Hay make some form of mistake, which just makes that pass that's just a little bit easier for him.
Definitely thought about it, showing the nose, looking around a little bit, but not close enough into turn 1, which is not a big braking zone. It's really just a commitment. Point the nose over the hill, track drops away, and then as it starts to come back up, you grip up again. So you've got to be all the way alongside there, maybe hoping to get a better run through turn 1 to break into the hairpin at turn 2. Or maybe a mistake through some of the blind corners around here, but he's been close up behind for a couple of laps now and not able to pass just yet. And there's not an infinite number of laps remaining in this race.
Yeah, and it's going to be one of those classic moves. Again, you can just cut it tight to the inside there. And as you see from Greg Garris, we saw it maybe 5 laps ago against JC Hay. It's so effective because the natural line through that corner is you're holding it so wide. So if you bring it tight, like Garris did, you can just get that momentary overlap, which might force your opponent to give you room, lose time, or just give you the place entirely.
As we may be expected, John Morgan pulling away from this group of drivers as he gets back towards where his podium pace should have him. Leaves Jack Turner now more vulnerable to Bill Smitham and Barry Hills in behind. Saw Franz Josef Stum maybe lighting up the tyres a little bit, similar to what John Morgan did that cost him that podium spot initially. So this is where the racing might well play out in these last couple of laps, right here between Jack Turner, Bill Smitham and Barry Hills.
Yeah, definitely the battle to watch here for 7th, or well, 8th really. But yeah, it's going to be interesting seeing how this really turns out. Not too many laps left here in this race. It certainly feels like the midsection of this race has started to fly by. That move once again, just cutting it short, almost allowed Hills to get underneath Bill Smitham and make a move. But Smitham was aggressive in his defence, aggressive but fair. It allowed him to command his line into that corner and make sure that he keeps the position for now.
All the progress he was able to make earlier in the race, Bill Smitham not seeming to have quite as much pace now to get towards Jack Turner, and the title of biggest mover has been taken away from him by Franz Josef Stum, who's gone from 18th on the grid to now 11th, just in the background a shot here.
Yeah, and that's after obviously we saw those incidents for the likes of Douglas Beasley, who was up quite a lot of positions before he obviously had that spin and grind out on the curb. Looking at other people that have moved quite a few places, Bill Smitham, like you say, up 6 places, so he's also in the hunt for that biggest mover trophy of pride, you could say. And yeah, it'd be certainly interesting to see whether he's at least able to make one more before the end of this race.
Positions gained and lost on the graphics right there. First and second, as they've always been throughout this race. Mike McCormick moving up into the podium position. Russ Addy moving up from 9th into 4th there. And John Payne moving from 8th to 5th. Barry Hills, though, still sitting here, not able to make any moves on Bill Smitham. Jack Turner getting away somewhat as well. Here is your race leader. Race lead back out to above 2 seconds. It was there or thereabouts earlier. Came down about 1.3. Now he's off the road.
Yeah, it's interesting with Sights. Obviously pushing it very, very hard. However, seeming to make a few little mistakes here and there. And although his pace is convincing, you can certainly not write off a mistake for him here. Is this track is punishing. You know, if you make that mistake just a little bit too much, you will end up in the grass. You will maybe end up spinning, hitting the gravel, losing a lot of time. And these little mistakes could be crucial when we come to our reverse grid race. And you just have to be that little bit more precise and that little bit more clinical with every move that you make.
At the moment, the fastest lap of the race belongs to Greg Seitz as a 1:18.6. I suspect maybe he was pushing on, trying to reset that, but and that's why he ran wide where he did. Maybe on the last lap he'll give it another go again. But yeah, Ragnar Wislof's gonna have to pull something magic out of the bag and go 2-3 tenths quicker than he has before to take fastest lap. Not for any really good reason other than maybe you just want to have the fastest lap of the race. Why not?
Why not? Why not, David? Why wouldn't you want the fastest lap of the race? It's a nice accolade to have, and certainly something that you might want to try your very best to achieve. So it is going to be the last lap here for our first and penultimate race here in this season. First race of the evening, but penultimate race of the season. And as Barney waves that white flag, there's just one 3.7 kilometre trip around this Brands Hatch circuit left in race number 1.
Seitz giving it all through turn 1, getting a fair chunk of the curb through turn 2, using the full width of the track. It looks like he's pushing on for the fastest lap of the race. As far out wide as it'll let you go, there's a bit of concrete out there that you do get to use. This is a deceptively long left-hander uphill there as well, and he does take a late apex there. The 1.7 second lead with a very, very strong championship lead as well. Now heading towards another race win that would absolutely guarantee Greg Seitz his first 60-plus Racing Adventures Championship. I'll look at some sectors here. How are the sectors looking for Greg Seitz? No personal bests this far around.
No, certainly not any personal best so far, but it's going to be it pretty much for this race, and what a drive it has been.
Absolutely. Pole position, every lap led for Greg Seitz. Championship leader takes a win in the final round at Brands Hatch. He looks absolutely thrilled with himself, as he should be. There's still one more race for this season of 60 plus racing adventures for us from Brands Hatch. Will he look to make the clean sweep? He ends up with the fastest lap of the race, and Ragnar Wisloff, I think, also comes across there to congratulate him. Mike McCormick's crossed the road, the finish line for the podium. A couple of other positions still being fought over here. Jack Turner, Bill Smith, and Barry Hills in that order for a couple of laps. No movement being made through the final corner on those positions.
Yeah, and it looks like people are going to finish pretty much line astern to what they were doing as we checked in a few laps ago. It was quite an interesting race, especially with the mistakes from the likes of Morgan. Seeing McCormick on the podium as well is quite interesting, especially with that battle for P2 in that Super 70s class. And I think overall, Brands Hatch did produce a pretty intriguing race here this evening for race number 1.
Absolutely. So, almost everyone crossing the start-finish line now on the Grand Prix track. Last car on the lead lap, David Bradley, just crossing the line now as well in 18th place. Greg Seitz, your winner of race number 1, 2 seconds from Ragnar Wisloff, with Mike McCormick on that podium, coming from 6th on the grid through to that 3rd place.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see whether we get anyone to come for an interview. We often do here on this broadcast. We like our good, chatty drivers.
So this is the results now that everyone's finished. Race 1 of 60 plus racing adventures at Brands Hatch. Greg Seitz, the winner, 2 seconds from Ragnar Wisloff. Mike McCormick, Russ Addy, John Payne, Craig Vaught, John Morgan, Jack Turner, Bill Smitham, and Barry Hills completing the top 10. Biggest mover of the race in 11th, Franz Josef Stum from JC Hay, Greg Garris, Richard Coulomb, Earl Setzer, Douglas Beasley, Ulf Olsen in 17th, ahead of David Bradley in 18th. Mike Grandy, Eugene Clark, and Gerhardus Jorrison, the last couple of drivers there. I think we didn't see Gerhardus Jorrison after having no qualifying start this race. So 20 drivers all in all. Dane, I'm sure you can find our race winner.
Yeah, so I will go and speak to
Dane
our race
William too.
I will go speak to our race winner now. Greg, a commanding victory over Ragnar, and certainly over the rest of the field. This Brands Hatch circuit poses a lot of challenges, especially in a high downforce Formula car. Talk a little bit about how it was to drive this car around this circuit this evening, and kind of what you're expecting for the second race.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. I mean, there's really no chance to rest on this track because it's short and turns and you're right on the edge all the time. So, to get a really fast lap in, you have to just push it right to the edge. And so my times were kind of bouncing around a little bit because I kind of backed off a little bit a few times. But yeah, Ragnar just was right there the whole time. So, kudos to him. He did a great job of keeping the pressure on me, so I couldn't just get away. But yeah, it takes a lot of concentration. And you're always kind of one mistake away from disaster here. But yeah, I had a great time, and it was good to have Ragnar kind of keeping that pressure on to keep me honest.
Yeah, well, it's certainly getting into the season now where boats aren't very viable in Scandinavia, so you're going to be seeing a whole lot more of Ragnar Wisloff over the next few months. So definitely going into next season, there could be some more appearances from him and maybe a bit of more of a championship challenge. I do think this championship is pretty wrapped up for you at this moment in time, Greg. Maybe obviously we're still going into the final race this season, but talk us a little bit about how your first championship year went here in 60 plus racing adventures.
I was pretty good. I mean, the competition was really good. Most of the time it was Ragnar and a couple other guys just kind of keeping the pressure on. But I had a little bit more pace, I think, throughout the season than everybody, so I was able to kind of notch in a fair number of wins. But yeah, it was actually really good and really fun. It's a great group of guys. The racing is clean. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
We always love broadcasting your guys' racing here on RaceSpotTV. Certainly look forward to seeing more of you in the future. We wish you the best of luck for the second race here this evening, and congratulations on your great championship run.
Yeah, thank you.
User was moved out of your
That was
channel.
Greg Seitz. Don't believe we've got anyone else to speak to so far, but talk to me a little bit about some of your takeaways from that race.
They're just tough to find.
They're just tough to find, yeah, that's a good point.
What did we have? Okay, let's see if we can get Ragnar Wisloff to join us, and he will. Second in that race, second in the championship. You're going to have to raise your game.
Yes, I'll have to, but I don't think it'll matter much in the standings overall. So we'll see. At least I could see Greg most of the race this time.
In a manner of speaking, you might have had your sights set on him.
Yeah, no, it didn't help to have my sights set on sights, but the great sights. You know, he is like a concert pianist who just goes on stage and performs beautifully. I don't know how much practice he has, but it's a wonder to behold, to sit behind him and see his lines. It's magic.
He took the fastest lap of the race too, and a couple of times we did check in what he was up to. It wasn't perfectly flawless for him, just a tiny bit of track mowing happening. This is a track where, it's the paved surface and then it's grass all the way around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very technical track. It's really fun when you have a bit of practice and you can sort of attack all the way, because it's a track which really rewards attacking. And for once, iRacing has let us really use the curbs and even some of the grass. So it's a really fun track. I think it suits this car and maybe even lower powered cars very well.
Greg, a little known for maybe showing all of his hand in qualifying in race 1 and then trying to have a little more fun with it in race 2. Definitely a chance that you could come away with another win this season.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Is he going to do that? Did he say that to you? He's going to start from the back?
But he didn't say, so I guess we're just crossing our fingers for it for entertainment value. This is very, very close to turning into 60 plus WWE.
Yeah. Well, it's the last race of the season, so I'd like to thank the organizers for doing such a good job and making sure that the league runs like clockwork. I think for this season there has been quite a few new talent coming in, new members coming in. So we must be doing something right, and I think a lot of it has to do with your broadcasts. But it seems that it is a good concept, and as you usually say, David, more people turn 60 every day. So if anyone's seeing this, listening to this, and want to join, please do.
Perfectly said, Ragnar. Congratulations on your season, on your podium, and go well in the last race.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
User was moved out of your
Ragnar
channel.
Wisloff finishing second, joining us there. Third place is with us, Will. It's Mike McCormick.
Hello, Mike. Congratulations on your podium. We don't often hear from you, I feel like, so it's good to have you in the booth here. You're kind of fighting for that second place in the Super 70s class, very, very close with Barry Hills. How do you kind of provision it going into this final race? Do you feel like you can secure that second? Maybe the microphone is not bound. Often a case on TeamSpeak sometimes, but hopefully we'll get to hear it from Mike when his microphone is working for him on his end. But what are your main takeaways, really, David, from that first race?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, doesn't matter. We don't need to hear David. Great, that's perfect, Mike. Right, so congratulations on that podium in the first race. I'll repeat my question again in case you didn't hear it. But yeah, regarding this fight for second in the Super 70s Championship going into the final race, do you feel like you can secure that over Barry?
It just depends on the races, how he does. I think he was ahead of me on points, so if he gets a third, I think he'll probably beat me.
Certainly he was, but I believe it was only by 4 points. So it's going to be close into that final race. I'm sure you'll give it your best. Talk to us about the challenges of this Brands Hatch circuit. Do you like it? Do you hate it? How does it feel in this car?
Oh, I've always liked this circuit. I used to race it in a Skippy. It's a lot of fun. I was fortunate in the race. Gernhardt must have had a problem because he just pulled off the track, and then John spun. John and I were the same speed, so we probably would have had a pretty good race.
Yeah, it was certainly a good race out there. John obviously had that moment exiting the second corner, the hairpin. It seems a real challenge, this car, under traction zones. Has that been the main challenge for you when adapting to this car over the past few seasons, or is there something else, a different characteristic of the car that you find particularly challenging or fun?
Mid-quarter understeer is what I don't like about it. We're going to probably change cars next season. I'm not sure exactly which one we're going to, though.
Ooh, very interesting. We'll be looking forward to seeing that here on RaceSpot TV. Well, we wish you the best of luck for this second race and the final race of this season, and good luck out there in that battle in the Super 70s Championship.
I appreciate it, William. Thanks for all y'all do. Love your broadcast.
Thank you very much. So sweet. I love all of these guys.
Yeah, they're all very lovely, and it's reflected normally in the way that they race each other. People have got respect for everyone else's time, and the way that they go racing in 60 plus racing adventures makes it not just a racing league, but a community. And Ragnar Wislov put it very well. The best time to join them is for a new season, and you can find them on the iRacing forum. You can find them around and join 60 plus racing adventures if you are yourself 60 plus. They've got one more race left tonight though, so we'll take a break here on RaceSpot TV and come back with qualifying and race 2, the final race of this season for 60 plus racing adventures at Brands Hatch. It's time for one final roll of the dice. One final trip, one final adventure in 60 plus racing adventures this season. The final race from Brands Hatch. Greg Seitz has already wound up the championship. John Morgan looking like he's taken the Super 70s championship. All that's left to decide is the team's championship and to see if Greg Seitz can clean sweep Brands Hatch before they can go racing for another 22 laps. It's time for qualifying. Will Chadwick joins me, David Haynes, with our producer Dane Baird here on RaceSpotTV. Will, we're ready to go. One final race.
One final race indeed, and we're going to be watching Ragnar Wisloff as he starts his first qualifying lap here at Brands Hatch GP. Going to go on board down through Paddock Hill Bend. A little bit of a missed apex there, but the car will grip up on the exit. Got to be careful not to touch the gravel on this new patch of iRacing. Very, very costly indeed. Going to try and bring it nicely towards the inside of the Druids corner through now to Graham Hill Bend. You want to try and clip a little bit of that inside. You can use a lot of the outside exit there as that AstroTurf is very, very grippy indeed. Now through Surtees, it's kind of a late apex corner. Gets that apex really nicely and drives up the hill well. Going down now, down Pilgrim's Drop, and then rising back up over Hawthorne Hill. Hawthorne's Bend is always a really fast corner, always on the edge there as you run out to that very, very thin outside curb. Going to be using all of the AstroTurf on the exit there as we go around Westfield Bend and into Sheen Curve. Up on the inside curb a little bit, carrying a lot of speed, using that aerodynamic load. Through Sterling's, using the camber of the corner, being careful not to jump onto the exit curb and bottoming out the car. And as you go past Clearways and through to Clark's Curve, you complete a lap here at the Brands Hatch GP circuit, I should say. Cut it close to the line, and that'll be the first time on the board for Wisloff. Not quite as quick as I think he would be hoping.
A couple more times trickling in there as well. John Payne going to second, John Morgan going to third, Douglas Beasley in fourth there, but it's only the first of two flying laps. The tyres start pretty cold on these cars and they build up a little bit as they go the second lap, typically quicker. This isn't the longest lap either, so it's a pretty short outlap, pretty short first flying lap. Ragnar Wisloff will be hoping to go even quicker on this lap number 2. Wolf Olsen will go into fourth, just provisionally for the moment.
Looking at some of the other times, be interesting to see what Wisloff's able to do on this second lap. I think we've seen a reasonable increase in track temperature this time by. And to see John Payne there up in second as it goes at the minute. Often we see him doing quite so well. But it's a good showing for him initially. We're still waiting for Greg Seitz to set a lap. Looks like he's holding back a bit. We've got 10 minutes in this qualifying session, but you don't need all of that time to set your 2 laps. And it's going to be Wisloff to the line. He's going to be setting his representative time just a tenth faster. Maybe that is good enough for him. However, I would just expect a little bit more of an improvement, especially after watching that turn 1 on his lap. That's Ulf Olsen's lap is going to be invalidated due to an off-track there on the exit.
John Payne got within half a tenth of a second of pole position there. Really strong qualifying from him in second. Then it's half a second back to John Morgan, who's in third. Obviously, that lap's not going to count for Ulf Olsen. David Bradley goes through into 13th. And we've got to talk about the elephant that's not in the room. Is that a saying? We're making it one. No Greg Seitz. No time yet from Richard Varley either.
Yeah, and Greg hasn't even gone on to his outlap yet, so as things currently stand, we might be seeing a Greg from the back special. Of course, we are in belief that he has wrapped up the championship now. I think that's pretty confirmed with the point system. So it wouldn't surprise me if you wanted to have some fun for the final chance this season. John Payne, good qualifying there, only a 400ths of a second from Ragnar Wisloff, and looks like as things stand, he'll be qualifying his minimum inside that top 5. So a really good showing for himself. You say that, but we have seen Greg start to his outlap, so we might be seeing a time not too long from now. Maybe not as well.
And he's got time to do it. 4 minutes left in the
Definitely,
session.
yeah.
Pole at the moment
100%.
is a minute 20, so you would need basically exactly 4 minutes to get around on an outlap and do 2 flying laps. Greg Seitz is in the hairpin at the moment. Here he is. This is the outlap, not the first flying lap, am I right?
Yeah. He's just come out the pits, ready to get his car ready for one flying lap. Tyre model on this car is pretty normal. Just a general small warm-up procedure, nothing too dramatic. And you just get yourself underway, ready for your qualifying lap. The 774 dominant across a lot of this season. His first full season in the championship, of course, we saw the hallmarks as he joined the championship late last season. This season he's really proven why he is one of the best 60 and above racing drivers on the service. But if you believe beat Greg Seitz, well, why not come and prove it? Get a membership at iRacing.com. Jump on over to the 60 Plus Racing League and you could be racing here on RaceSpotTV next season. But here he goes for his 2 qualifying laps. What can Seitz do?
So 2 minutes 43 or so on the clock as he starts this lap. We'll have time to just squeak the 2 flying laps in. Greg Seitz is personal best, but not purple through the first of the 6 or so sectors I can see. I've got a little more detail than what's on screen, obviously, as the first flying lap. Tyres are still not all there just yet for Greg Seitz.
A lot of understeer there through Surtees. A lot of mid-corner understeer. We heard McCormick talking about mid-corner understeer and potentially hinting at a car change for the following seasons. We have seen this PM18 for quite a while now, actually. We did mention, I think, last broadcast that this was either the equaling season in terms of this car being the most popular across the, 28 seasons we've had now. Obviously before that we had the Pro Mazda, which was loved by a lot of people, so a car change, I guess you could say, could be warranted on the horizon. Certainly wondering what that car may be. So it's going to round the final corner of Clark Curve and we're going to see what he has to offer initially. Will he be able to go to the top of the times? Certainly looked like a decent lap that he put together. Is a, I think that was a 19.740, yeah, so got a bit of time to find really on his second lap, so half a second to find does show how good that time from Wisloff and Payne really was.
Very well might find it though, because so far it's up and he's flying. He needs to find that half a second around this lap. Personal best through the first sector, hopefully less understeer as you noted a lap ago. Now to carry the speed up the hill along the straight here, one of the longest straights. Basically the only time I think we see them get into 6th gear is after the drop here, just as they then fire it into the long right-hander here. Keeping it all within bounds, keeping it all tidy, flowing the speed all the way around. Greg Seitz is tracking for an improvement here. If I compare him to Ragnar Whitlock's pole time, look, going sector by sector by sector, I think he's just about level now. He was a 10th up through the first sector, dropped a 10th to him through one of the corners there, but only one corner left in this. You want to throw as much speed as possible through the final corner. The track wants to get away from you. If you touch the grass, you're going to be in trouble. But he's out the final corner. He's heading towards the checkered flag. It's tracking equal with pole position. Can Greg Seitz clean sweep poles at Brands Hatch? He'll cross the line and he will only go to 3rd. Still needed a couple more tenths out there. He's going to be starting from the 2nd row of the grid based on that qualifying performance. Ragnar Wisloff has the pole. So we'll get to that grid as they begin to form up for another formation lap and another rolling start. This race 2 identical to everything we saw out of race 1 as far as the race length and all of that.
Yeah, the race length is the same as we always see. A unique part to this series is that we get those 2 qualifying sessions and it certainly throws up a good grid.
That front row is Ragnar Wisloff and John Payne, just 39 thousandths of a second between them. Greg Seitz and John Morgan, the next row, and then Mike McCormick and Barry Hills. Got Jack Turner and Franz Josef Stum, quotation marks Stummy, in 8th. Russ Addy and Mike Randy 9th and 10th. And Ulf Olsen, Douglas Beasley, Bill Smitham, David Bradley, Eugene Clark, Earl Setzer, JC Hay, Greg Garris, Greg Gilman, and Richard Varley as the 20 drivers. Gilman and Varley, no qualifying times from them. Greg Garris also didn't have one. We saw a couple of times through that qualifying session how you could try to set a qualifying time and in 2 laps not pull it off.
Yeah, certainly very doable at this circuit. We saw that from some of the very best esports drivers in the Formula 4 Championship, which is going on simultaneously, their final round as well here at this circuit. And it is a very, very hard track, especially when you're pushing to the very edge. And it's very easy to make a mistake that costs you many, many tenths of a second. Some of the key areas really for me is the exit of turn 1. If you touch that gravel even slightly, you lose buckets of time due to the new gravel update in iRacing, and there's a lot of sections around the back where you can just be a little bit too greedy on the curbs on the AstroTurf, and you can get that off track, which obviously in the qualifying session does end up invalidating your lap. I did note that the sector we saw, the final sector from Sites, did look very conservative initially when we were watching it in that second lap of his, and it almost doesn't surprise me after seeing that sector and knowing it was level up until that point to not be pole, but quite strange because we have seen him be so dominant, especially in that first race, and the likes of John Payne being up there in second place, someone we've not really seen feature massively throughout the season and throughout the previous seasons, a more of a newer member to this grid. It's definitely a chance for him to maybe pull out a result.
Well, the track looks great. We've got 20 drivers for the final race of the season in 60-plus racing adventures, and what very well may be the final race of the Indy Pro 2000 PM18 in 60-plus racing adventures as well. The front rows, Ragnar Wisloff, John Payne. Greg Seitz is there in 3rd, trying to get a bit of temperature into his tyres here in the last little bit of this formation lap, staring right at the back of Ragnar Wisloff. John Morgan alongside him there to wrap up the Super 70s Championship here in the final race. Pace car in. Race leader away, green flag waving, and Greg Seitz gets a really good jump. For all of his great qualifying, John Payne doesn't get an awesome race start. He's back into 3rd already, potentially under yet more pressure. Cold tyres for everyone all through the field here. Difficult to manage on the opening race start. Track temp 23 Celsius means it'll take a while to build all of that temperature up. Teammates side by side with Jack Turner and Franz Josef Stum through the hairpin.
And we've got our 3 protagonists in the Super 70 class all together on
the teammates
track.
almost make contact. A lock up there from Stum.
And that was really, really close in the background. But yeah, McCormick made a move into turn 1, getting himself ahead of John Morgan. And there's a crash on the exit. Spin.
More problems for
out of
Franz Josef
30s.
Stum. He goes off now. He gets collected as well by David Bradley. 2 cars off the track and damage.
Yeah, and that's a huge moment there for those 2 drivers, and that car's done. Even if, it looks like a drive shaft issue as well, looking at the way the gearing's working. We're going to get a replay here. Into Surtees lap 1, takes quite a wide entry, and therefore when he gets on the power, just too much, and unfortunately isn't able to collect it. And then that big hit to the left rear at the end there by Bradley, I believe, just causes that drive shaft to break.
So a couple of damaged cars already, but Ragnar Wisloff holds on to his race lead from that pole position. Immediately off the race start, Greg Seitz was into 2nd place and putting some pressure onto him from that maybe being caught napping on the race start a little bit. John Payne seems to have found his feet once again. They're in 3rd now, running a little bit wide. He's not alone in going past the curb, past the concrete, and to where it's actually grass and soil.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's certainly going to be an interesting race battle here. Wislaw versus Sainz, and maybe Payne as well. Hopefully we get a good race to end this season here in 60 Plus Racing Adventure. It's definitely been a season to remember. The rise of a new star against old or iconic rivals, I suppose you could say. What's Addy? We've not talked too much about him. The champion going out, and Wislaw wide through Sheen Curve, and it's going to open up an opportunity for Sainz to maybe make a move down into Clark Curve. He's going to show his nose, but unable to really dive for it, and Wislaw just hangs on despite the mistake.
They've both been off the track there now across 2 races between Ragnar Wislaw and Greg Seitz. Easily done, blind on the way in, got to carry as much speed as possible. It brings John Payne into the fight as well. 3-way for the lead here with then Mike McCormick dragging a train along as well. Great racing on show for the final race of the season. 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Wislaw finds his feet again, now got a couple of car lengths ahead of Greg Seitz, but cannot afford to make a mistake like we just saw again.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a pressure mistake, really, isn't it? It happens when you're just kind of not just trying to carry that little bit too much speed, and it leaves him vulnerable. And it's going to be interesting to see whether Wislaw can deal with that pressure, because obviously he knows how fast Seitz is. He raced against him in that last race, and he knows if he lets him go, it might be the last we see of him.
Knowing that this is where Ragnar Wislaw was weak a little earlier, Greg Seitz is keeping the pressure on right now, looking for where he might be able to pass around Brands Hatch's Grand Prix layout. Only a couple of really big braking zones, turn 2 being one of them, and in a lot of other places you really just dab the brakes in this car, go down 1 gear and pitch it through the corner, so it's not quite like Long Beach or other tracks that have got some really big braking zones where you could try to get alongside. Makes passing a little tougher around here, riding aboard the champion-elect's perspective.
And you get an appreciation for how hard it is to drive a car around this circuit. Of course, it always looks a little bit easier, I feel, from an outside perspective, but when you're really racing these, it's so hard to keep these very powerful machines under control with relatively light levels of downforce. Certainly not something that you'd see from I guess a higher class of prototype machine or formula machine. Very, very close through these high-speed sections, and it really feels like a question of when, not if, he will get past. But we feel like we're yet to see Wislaw really pick up the pace and where he is able to bring it to.
A couple of laps into this race and Wislaw still manages to lead. Greg Seitz is going nowhere though, when John Payne is holding on to that slipstream but starting to almost fall a second behind Wislaw and Seitz, who were far and away the 2 quickest drivers of race number 1. And then, of course, as is typical, battles all the way through the midfield as well, like Bill Smith and Greg Garris, Eugene Clark, and the group that Mike McCormick has been leading there in 4th. John Morgan sitting in 5th place at the moment, just behind him.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we do need to keep one eye on that Super 70 battle as well, because even though this race lead is interesting, we do need to factor in the fact that there's still fights going on amongst that Super 70 class. Morgan's in a good place, you know. I think he's not going to be overturned at the top of the table, but I would certainly expect McCormick to have a good chance over overturning Barry Hills. A great day, really, for Mike McCormick so far, showing some really good pace. Someone that I've always thought has been relatively underrated in this series. We've never really seen him get that many great results, however, has always had a good turn of pace. And as he leads effectively the Super 70 class at this moment in time, certainly would put the odds on him to hold this place and snatch away second in that Super 70s class.
Cars navigating all of the elevation changes that Brands Hatch is known for, dropping down on the exit of turn 1, back up the hill, Big braking zone here, and we've seen in John Morgan's case, challenging throttle application on the exit. Mike McCormick runs very, very wide.
And it's something you're able to do at that corner, but you've got to be careful not to catch any of the grass, because then you really start having problems. And this battle here, Morgan's able to stay really close, but also is Sights, and I believe Sights is also attacking the leader as well.
Yeah, Greg Sights leading the race now in front of Ragnar Wisloff. Chops back across as well. So battles all the way through the field in 60 plus racing adventures. A couple of positions changing now, and John Morgan's under pressure from Russ Addy all of a sudden. Barry Hill's Jack Turner, the next cars behind. The triple one's Russ Addy and 177 John Morgan.
And as we're looking back at that lead battle, it looks like Sights was able to get through last lap. It looked to be towards the fast section of the lap, so it would be interesting to kind of understand how Sights was able to do that. But Wisloff is still close, but it is dangerous now because we know how fast Sights is. We're going to get a replay of this move, the over and under, making Wisloff defend, compromising his line, and then just being able to get through. And as we return to live pictures, you struggle to think how Wisloff will make that difference and be able to get back past again.
He was in this position all the way through race number 1 as well, and for the most part able to go with Greg Sights with similar pace, but not really able to put the shoe on the other foot, put pressure on Greg Sights and come back to the lead. So from third on the grid, Greg Sights got a great start, got past John Payne, has now gotten past Ragnar Wisloff, and for the moment, early on in this race, in position to go for a Brands Hatch clean sweep.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see really what is able to be done at this moment in time between these drivers. But it's certainly an interesting dynamic because I think Wisloff is fast, but I just don't know, like we say, if he's fast enough to be able to make that move. But we'll certainly get to find out over the course of the next 14 laps. 14 laps to finish the season. Season number, is it 27, 28? I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but it's certainly been a lot here in the 60 plus racing league.
This says season 28 on this document. John in the 6th, Russ Addy's gotten past Barry Hills, and Jack Turner are right in place to battle it out here as well. Taking a look, and got a bit locked up.
Yeah, a little bit of a
amongst
moment
all of that
there
as well.
Morgan, obviously he was chasing Mike McCormick, getting wide, just grabbing the grass a little bit, allowing Addy to get a run, your current champion. And as we head down into Surtees, just maybe the different angle, maybe the slightly too much speed carried, and just nearly allowed that car to go round on him.
It's right back at it though, through turn 1. John Morgan in behind Russ Addy.
You wonder who's really got the pace here. Addy, and I think he'll admit it as well, has been underwhelming this evening for what we've usually seen from him. But it's going to be interesting. It looks like there's a battle on for the lead again with those times going close. And wow, Wisloff has been able to make the move. That's really impressive.
Yeah, Ragnar Wisloff back to the race lead, chopping and changing a little bit between himself and Greg Sights. Here's the replay of how it happened. Case of shoe on the other foot. Almost going around the outside there. It's that left-hander is super treacherous as we've seen, so if you get a good run through there and someone else doesn't, then you've then got the longest straight of the track to try and slipstream past them. And Wislaw leads us onto lap 10.
Yeah, and that's something that I think both me and you didn't expect here in this race this evening. And I'm sure I'd love to talk to Wislaw about it later on, maybe in the commentary booth, if he's able to finish in one of those podium positions and come and have a chat to us. Because, you know, by his own admission and by our admission, we know Sights has been a level this season where drivers have struggled to match him. And it's really been a little bit of a reality check for some of these drivers here in this field to kind of try and step up their game. And this is a statement of intent going into next season, like we say. Weather in Scandinavia right now does not look well for boats. It's pretty cold, and being a little bit of a boat enthusiast, Wislaw, I'm sure, will maybe have a little bit more time on his hands going into the next season, season 29, and maybe even with a new car on the cards, it could be his chance to mount a championship challenge once again.
Wouldn't be the first time that the car has changed across the 28 seasons of 60-plus racing adventures. Initially, that curb proves a bit challenging for Ragnar Wislaw. Greg Sights has a run back at him to the inside of the final corner. Side by side they go. One of the corners where you can carry maybe more speed around the outside, but Greg Sights has done a really, really good job still side by side on the pit straight to start lap 11. Sights with the inside into one. Wislaw maybe looking to go a little over under here. He's back in a second place. It was the Star Mazda initially in this championship. Stefan Roskin absolutely dominant in that car, made the move to the PM18. Roskin less dominant. We saw the emergence of Ragnar Wislaw, of Russ Addy and others. Well, another change could be on the cards. Greg Sights leads the way, and that battle that they've just had has brought John Payne back into it, and he still does hold the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, and I did notice that, and it's by some margin as well. You know, a good 3/10 faster than what we saw from our pole time. And although John Payne hasn't got better than a second place this season, and that was way back in round number 2, it'd be interesting to see what he's able to do here to close off the season. I think maybe for him as well, a learning season, kind of getting an understanding of where people were at, and maybe go off with the chance of winning it here in the final round would be certainly a great way to end this season as it stands. A little look on board, David, from Payne's perspective. What would you be thinking if you were in this position right now?
I think stay with them. Don't make any big mistakes. Stay in the slipstream, and know that, you know, final race of the season. Sights looking to go for the clean sweep. Wislaw making a statement. It's a bit of pride on the line. The chance of those two battling side by side again, some opportunity appearing for you, very high, very likely. Also,
I didn't expect the question. Yeah, but absolutely, I do agree with your take there, to be honest. And I think something as well is I'm sort of feeling a bit of tension in the air. These drivers are so nice to each other all the time that I'm just starting to think, what happens if tension's overboiled? What happens if we saw a bit more of a feisty battle than we were expecting from Wislaw and Sights to end the season? There's nothing really on the line anymore, which means that both of these drivers can really risk it for that chocolate biscuit. And maybe we will see a very, very good battle here to close off this season.
Speaking of, a penguin is inferior to Tim Tam.
You're wrong. But we won't class over that too much, as we could talk about very, very silly things all day. As we have done in the past with genetically engineered grass, which, in fairness, iRacing did listen to us. But back to the racing action.
I've been very good lately as far as, my voice being heard. Like 4-litre Aston Martins, genetically engineered grass. I should have asked for like world peace or something.
They've actually listened to everything you've said so far, which means that really we need to be careful with the power that we now hold, because we can't just ask for something really stupid, or it might actually happen.
Be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. You just might get it. Seitz, Wisloff, Payne, all within 1 second here in the lead of the race. Seitz and Wisloff having traded positions a couple of times, and again we've tried to hypothesise, how does John Payne get into this? What does he do about it? And we've passed the halfway point of the race as well. The tyres on these cars go through a couple of phases, don't they? Initially, you know, a little treacherous because the tyres are cold. They start to grip up. And then the pace doesn't necessarily drop away towards the end of the run, but the slip angles increase somewhat. The car does get a little bit taily, and for John Payne, he's experienced that. The rear stepped out on him. He's gone through the grass, and he sees Seitz and Wisloff sail away. He'll rejoin still ahead of McCormick in fourth, though.
Unfortunately, Payne has maybe felt the pain here as he turns in. Just clips the grass on the exit, and great save to be completely honest, but hitting that gravel, it scrubs off so much speed in these later patches, and yeah, that's been really, really crucial for him.
And he's done it again, has he?
Oh.
The exit of turn 2.
That's
so Mike
really
McCormick goes to third place, looking here similar to what John Morgan did. Just, too eager with the throttle. And then the save not quite as good as we witnessed earlier. So Mike McCormick goes to third, Russ Addy to fourth, John Morgan to fifth through all of that. After all of it, he has rejoined down in 11th with a lot of work to do. Got Barry Hills, Mike Grandy, Jack Turner battling it out of 6th, 7th, 8th here. Grandy looking very, very close to Barry Hills.
Good recovery from Grandy, of course. That qualifying for both races does open up that possibility to be able to recover if you've had a bad race and not feel the burden of that bad result to start the race weekend. And looking like those leaders are swapping and changing positions. As we watch Grandy here, I think he might also be going for the move as well.
Side by side into turn 1, the inside usually wins. This time, no exception. Looking for a cross back over under, door closed in his face. Mike Grandy wants this position, and he wants it bad, and he'll keep Barry Hills behind him. Jack Turner watched all of that play out.
Yeah, and it looks like Grandy has probably got the pace here to run away and maybe try and forge his way closer to the likes of John Morgan. However, I would suggest unlikely. Here you're watching your lead battle changed once again. It's been a stellar affair here for the final time here in 60 Plus Racing Adventures, and your two main protagonists throughout the years, I believe 5-time champion of Wisloff and the champion-elect, battling it out to see who can come out with the top odds here in the final race of the season.
And it's just a straightforward sword fight duel here between Ragnar Wisloff and Greg Seitz. No more John Payne in their mirrors. He's gone. They've got 5 seconds to play with ahead of Mike McCormick in third. So for Ragnar Wisloff, all he's got to worry about right now is Greg Seitz. Greg Seitz, all he's got to worry about is Ragnar Wisloff. They've both got to worry about this track.
Yeah, certainly. It's been punishing, especially in this final race here this evening. And you've seen them both make various mistakes at points in time. And although never famed for its vast overtaking opportunities, this track really has presented us with a fantastic final race and final conclusion to this chapter, the 28th chapter of this wonderful book. And it's going to be interesting to see kind of what we're going to have happen here. It's anyone's guess, really. They're just fighting and driving so close to one another that, honestly, I really couldn't tell you what I think would happen here.
Wisloff defending on the way into the final corner. Puts him on a compromised line, of course. Greg Seitz will then look to carry more speed through the final corner, keep the pressure on Ragnar Wisloff, who again will have to defend the inside into turn number 1. Going side by side for the race lead. Wisloff holds on, and for the third corner in a row, Greg Seitz goes, okay, I'll try to take the full racing line, try to carry more speed at you and attack you into the next corner. Looks like Ragnar will be able to hold on after all of that, but the pressure is absolutely mounting with just a couple of laps left in the final race of the final round of Season 28 of 60 Plus Racing Adventures. There could be no finer place to bury the brand's hatchet.
What a great analogy, and that analogy may continue as we're going down into turn number 5. It always baffles me how little turns there are on this track, and it always feels like a little bit more. Certainly some American tracks, Road Atlanta, cough cough, have stupid corner names, but because this track's British, it's not too bad.
You know, at Road America, the Sargento Cheese Bridge used to be a red truck, but then at some point in the early 2000s, they changed it to a yellow truck. Now it's a yellow truck at the Sargento Cheese Bridge. We're real cheese people.
But yellow is much more of a cheese colour than red. That surely is the case.
I think that's probably the logic behind it all as well.
I can't imagine cheese ever being red. It wouldn't be very, very fun indeed. I don't know, it just seems like a colour that cheese would never be. But enough about cheese. Let's continue talking about the racing. These two have seemed pretty confident in their abilities around these corners, and for me there's quite a dynamic at play. Sights looks faster in the high-speed corners, but as soon as we get to the low-speed corner of turn 2, it just seems like every lap Wisloff is able to pull 1-2 tenths, and that's just giving him that buffer to stay ahead at this moment in time.
Oh, so close as it's underneath 2 tenths between Ragnar Wisloff and Greg Seitz. And every single time they go through these particular corners, you can see launching over the curbs, particularly through here, as demonstrated by the haircut that we all just received from them going over us there.
Yeah, and it is certainly nice to have a haircut by a Formula car, at least as long as you don't have anything more than that. Only 4 laps to go, I think. If my math serves me correctly, it might be 3, but there is definitely not that long left in this very, very good battle. Around about 4 minutes of racing action left in this season, and it's certainly going to go out with a bang. These drivers have got so much time behind them in order to be able to battle between one another. Of course, we saw Payne driving well early on, but unfortunately those 2 mistakes in quick succession dropped him out of contention.
Everyone knows it becomes impossible to do mathematics once you are live on air. Doesn't matter whether it's it's commentary, it's anything else, radio, just impossible to do maths when the red on-air light is blinking.
Yeah,
but Wisloff and Seitz still so close. The chance that they catch a little bit of traffic on this lap as well. Not on this lap, but between now and the end of the race.
Just Richard Varley ahead. Maybe had an issue early on and is not quite able to have kept up. Probably a trip to the pit lane, I would imagine, is what's caused him to drop back that far. We'll certainly be interfacing with our leaders in the next lap, I would imagine. And it looks like Seitz is going to go and try and get a move done.
Yeah, he doesn't want to wait. He's down the inside of turn 1. And Wisloff thought he could hold on around the outside, but he can't. Before they even catch the traffic, Greg Seitz gets past Ragnar Wisloff once again with 3 laps to go. Richard Varley, I think we didn't see in race number 1, so he's still coming to grips with Brands Hatch here in race number 2. Leaders breathing down his throat, and it will box in Greg Seitz just a little bit, who looks to go late over under. Some confusion about which way Varley's going does not help Greg Seitz at all. Ragnar Wisloff has more speed, but he'll have to look around the outside, down Pilgrim's Drop, and then uphill into the long right-hander. You could maybe hold your own around the outside here, and that's what he's going to try to do. Still side by side here. Back to the lead goes Ragnar Wisloff. Greg Seitz may be forgiven for cursing Richard Varley's name under his breath just once.
Well, these drivers may be above the age of 60, but you wouldn't be able to guess it by the racing. What a move by Ragnar Wisloff to take the lead, but obviously having a little bit of a mistake there and leaving himself vulnerable as we go into turn number 9, Clark Curve. We saw them racing through here earlier in the race with the inside line. Certainly going to be a shorter run for Sights, but they're going to be incredibly equal towards the line as they start lap number 20.
A dead heat between the leaders, crossing the start-finish line to get 2 laps to go, and this time with far more confidence around the outside. Ragnar Wisloff in turn 1 will give Greg Seitz nothing for free. Through the hairpin as well, it's all about who gets the best traction off the exit. Wisloff gets enough to hold the inside at the bottom of the hill here. Greg Seitz has a slide, and for 3 corners in a row, the race leaders are side by side. Wisloff will know he needs a good exit here because it's where the passing has tended to happen with late apexes, early apexes, slides through there, and then the slipstream downhill, picking up speed. The only time these cars get into 6th gear, and Greg Seitz knows it as he goes to the inside, but Wisloff was strong around the outside of this corner just a lap ago. That's where he took the race lead, and he'll hold on, but the pressure right now is absolutely immense.
Absolutely. This racing has been utterly incredible. The 2 titans of this championship challenge here in season 28, showing us for one last time why they are both up there, 1 and 2. Lap 22 is about to be started, the final lap of this season, and it couldn't be any closer.
Pressure immense. Ragnar Wisloff trying to stop Greg Seitz, clean sweeping Brands Hatch on his way to his first 60-plus Racing Adventures Championship. For Seitz, all that matters is the race win, the pride, because he's already got the biscuits. And for Ragnar Wisloff, it's pride as well, with the shoe on the other foot in that way. Just 3/10 between them as well. The key overtaking opportunities. A good exit from the next corner, or into the final corner if it still proves to be a weak spot for Ragnar Wisloff. He knows his traction's so important there, and he gets a good run on board with Greg Seitz going up through the gears, into 5th gear, into 6th gear, closing in on Ragnar Wisloff, but not close enough to try to pounce and attack through the Grand Prix loop.
He's absolutely on the edge of adhesion here through these high-speed corners. Seitz desperately looking for a mistake from Wisloff. Only 3 corners to go here, and they're getting perilously close to the outside bounds. Who is going to come out on top?
Just an inch away from the grass, both drivers on track. Ragnar Wisloff not making a mistake, trying to just be cool and calm through the final lap here. Great through the final corner as well. The checkered flag to strike back. Ragnar Wisloff wins the final race of the season at Brands Hatch.
What a fantastic race there from the top 2 in your championship. Seitz may be the champion, but Wisloff won probably one of the best fights of the season. Many people further behind coming across the line, as I believe Mike McCormack steals 2nd in the 70th, in the Super 70s class.
Yeah, great battles all the way through the field, right to the end there as well. A couple that we couldn't catch because, hey, when the leaders are side by side, you've got to look at the leaders going side by side. Russ Addy snuck past Mike McCormick for 3rd outright, and then John Morgan ended up finishing in the 5th place. You had Mike Grandy and Barry Hills and Jack Turner and John Payne also fighting. John Payne working his way back through the field after 2 potentially uncharacteristic mistakes. He had plenty of speed, but there was just 1 lap from hell from him here at Brands Hatch that just didn't suit him. Last drivers coming around to take the checkered flag as well. Richard Varley, Franz Josef Stum, and we saw Greg Gilman as well. Some super close battles in the midfield, which is great to have, as well as, I think, a lead battle, a battle for the win of the ages.
What a race. I think that's one of the best races me and you have both commentated on in this series. And we've been doing quite a few seasons now, and yeah, it was just so intense the entire time. Some incredible racing respect and incredible moves as well.
Let's look at the results then. Ragnar Wisloff with a winning margin, a slim one, but winning is a winning. He strikes back against Greg Seitz, and then what a battle they had. Russ Addy, you see there, just a 10th ahead of Mike McCormick as they duelled on the final lap. All of it happening just in front of John Morgan. Less than a second between Mike Grandy and Barry Hills in the battle for 6th there, and Jack Turner right on the coattails. So too was John Payne, not able to take quite as many positions in the final laps as he would have liked. Ulf Olsen rounds out the top 10. Douglas Beasley, Greg Garris, Eugene Clark, Bill Smitham, another tranche of drivers in close company there with JC Hay and Greg Gilman, last cars on the lead lap. Richard Valli and Franz Josef Sturm going a lap down. Earl Setzer 9 laps down. Does not look like we saw David Bradley in the final race of the season from Brands Hatch. But you've got to say, when you look back on this championship, more than just this round, what an entrance Greg Seitz has made, the 28th season champion in 60-plus racing adventures.
Yeah, certainly, and you've got to give him the credit that he deserves. The dominant season, often performing at the highest level, and has really pushed his competitors to drive better and to perform better than they would have ever imagined they could have brought from themselves. I certainly remember some of the messages that we got originally when he was joining the league. I remember from Ragnar saying how good he was, and I think really that shows how much people have stepped up to his ability, especially the likes of Ragnar, who we know has been fast for so long. But that race there was just such a great way to end this season.
Absolutely. So let's get to our podium from race 2 of 60-plus racing adventures from Brands Hatch. In third place was Russ. I always go better when you guys are broadcasting. Addy.
That's
and
right.
You pulled off a move or two late in that race.
Yeah, I think the third place was up for whoever made the least mistakes at the end.
Certainly, it was close between yourself, Mike McCormick, and John Morgan. I feel like it's a rare occasion when John Morgan doesn't stand on the podium. That's the vibe I tend to get.
Yeah, John is incredibly reliable, polite, and just smooth. You know, he's good. It took a while to get by him.
And you did. You take third in the final race of this season. What a phenomenon Greg Seitz has been this season in 60 plus.
Yeah, he's our Max Verstappen, I guess.
Fair way of looking at it, potentially, as he broken some records as far as win streaks, potentially going back to when Stefan Rösken used to be so strong in the Star Mazda.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, his ability is pretty amazing. When you watch what he's doing, if I get out in the grass or take the edge like he does, I spin. He doesn't seem to, so I have to analyze it. I saved this last race so I can analyze a little bit more.
A little bit of an off-season break to bring out the microscope and check that all out. We also often talk about the teams championship because we know who's the outright championship. We know who's the Super 70s champion. And yourself and your teammate Randy Shoemake taking it to the final round here, I guess, in a battle for that team's championship too.
Yeah, we did all right. Randy had some back surgery a couple weeks ago, so he's been laid up, which is really unfortunate. Randy, get better. But he's very reliable. I just wish he was able to be racing. I'm sure he does too.
Yeah, hopefully he'll be back for future seasons. Some whispers on the grapevine as well that 60-plus racing adventures could look a little different in the future.
Yeah, they're tossing around ideas of different cars. The F3 might be one. They had a couple questionnaires out and some test driving, so we'll see. It'll be interesting if they change the cars. Hopefully we can find one that somebody can beat Greg more reliably.
Well, congrats on that podium, and look forward to seeing more of you going forward.
Thank you. And again, I do well when you guys broadcast. Thanks for the broadcasting. And Stumi, thanks a lot, buddy.
There you go, Russ Addy, third place in race number 2. Second place in race number 2 was Greg Seitz.
Hello.
Well, congratulations on the championship. That must be the first thing that we talk about here. But also on a fantastic race. Me and David briefly exchanged. I think that was probably one of the best races, if not the best race we've ever commentated on in this series. And I think it shows how people have took the challenge to step up to your level, especially Ragnar, and how you guys had such a respectful yet fantastic race out there.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was definitely the best race that we've had together. It was, you know, lots of respect given, and it was just so fun trying to chase him down. And then I made a mistake or two, and he took advantage of it. But yeah, he was. It's such a hard track to get by somebody because you just don't get those long runs. But yeah, it was a fantastic race. You know, Ragnar did a great job and ended up, you know, with the win. He got that pick at the end with the lap car, and I was like, oh no. So, you know, kudos to him for taking advantage of it. You know, he did a great job, and he raced me super clean, and yeah, it was just so much fun. That was definitely my funnest race this season with this league.
Yeah, it can certainly go both ways when it comes down to lap traffic, but you were certainly very, very close to being able to have him back. You certainly looked like you had a bit of an advantage in the high speed, but then again, I would also say Ragnar had maybe a little bit of an advantage at the slow speed. So it was kind of a really nice balance to see you guys battle amongst each other. What do you feel like it's going to be like going into the next season? Of course, with some of the rumors that the car may be changing.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking forward to it. I love this car, but it just doesn't get enough use in the officials. So, you know, I think it's probably time to change, and I think we're talking about potentially the F3. So, very familiar car for me. So, you know, I think I'll be able to kind of jump in and get right back up to speed. But yeah, I hope Ragnar and I, and you know, anybody else. John was in that race for a little while too until he made a mistake behind us, but. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm looking forward to next season. I hope we have races as good as this one.
Certainly, we do too. But we just have to say here from the RaceSpot team and everyone, congratulations on your championship. Very, very impressive drive. Russ Addy has already called you the Max Verstappen of the league, so you're gonna have to live up to that next season and make it a back-to-back championship.
I'll do my best, but yeah, I want to say congrats to Ragnar too, because that was just a great win on his part. So there's that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us, Booth. We do appreciate these interviews, and congratulations again on your championship.
All right, thanks guys, and thanks for the broadcast.
One more for you, David. It looks like your race winner here in the second race this evening, Ragnar Westloff.
Ragnar, you got one back right at the end there, trading the lead a couple of times, maybe 4 or 5 corners in a row side by side. Not quite the whole lap, but definitely a battle.
It was good fun. It was good fun. And I'm very happy that this was, if you like, the last race of this season. It might actually be the last race in the league with this car, even. So it was good fun, and to be able to, you know, to race properly with Greg, that was unexpected, but fantastic fun. It was good. I enjoyed it.
Did you get a sense for sort of where around the lap his driving style was stronger than yours and vice versa?
Yeah. He is, you know, his trademark is using the entire track and then a little bit more. So into turn 8, that left-hander, that downhill left-hander towards the end, he goes a little further out on the right-hand side on the entry, and that gives him a much better exit. And I think I was a little better in turn 9. And that was crucial because for most of the time I was able to keep him from getting alongside into turn 1 on the start-finish straight. So you know, maybe it was actually quite even.
And you held the lead with that good qualifying as well. So that started your race in good form to have the pole position.
Yes, of course, but Greg didn't take long to get right up alongside, and John Payne was right there as well for quite some time. So it was a three-way fight for half the race. It was you know, fantastic fun. But Greg is a very clean and very fair racer, and I try to be as well. So you know, I don't know if you can remember, but in the beginning of the season, we had a couple of come-togethers. I think 3 races in a row, and this time, I think Netcode was a bit more kind to us and allowed us to race very closely.
That you did, and you are victorious in the end. Congrats, Ragnar.
Thank you, David. So when we see you guys next time, maybe it'll be in a different car. We'll find out. But let me just also say congrats to Greg. Very, very worthy and well-earned championship for him for the first full season of his. And I hope he sticks around. He should be a yardstick for all of us to try to improve.
Brilliant. Well done.
Thanks.
Our podium from the final race, season 28 of 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Russ Addy in third, Greg Seitz, the champion, in second, Ragnar Wisloff with a little bit of the last laugh, taking the race win. Thank you for joining us on RaceSpotTV, and of course, congratulations to Teams Champions, congratulations to Super 70s champion John Morgan and Season 28 champion Greg Seitz. I've been David Haynes with Will Chadwick, Dane Baird with the pictures, with the replays, with the graphics, with all of that. Do subscribe to us here on RaceSpotTV as we bring you much, much more awesome sim racing action. We'll see you again.